My name is Margaret, and I was 52 years old when my life changed completely. I don't give a damn that the roads are washed out. Do you understand how much 1 hour of my delay costs? I will drag you through the courts. I will raze your firm to the ground. Find someone, crawl on your knees, but I need to be in the Seattle office in 2 hours. Dear viewers, please let us know where you are watching from and which region or country you are in. Please like this video, watch it until the end, and subscribe to our channel. Your support is very important to us. Thank you so much. Edward Vance, a major investor and co-owner of a construction holding, let his voice boom across the entire office of the elite escort service, Premium Transit. He slammed his palm with all his might against the expensive lacquered desk of the CEO. The plastic pen rolled off the table and fell onto the carpet. The CEO, Arthur Sterling, a man in his mid-40s in a flawlessly pressed gray suit, frantically wiped his neck with a handkerchief. His face was covered in crimson blotches. I had no idea that morning that my life was about to change completely. Until then, I had felt as though I had been pushed to the very edge of life. Once I had my own home, my own family, and my own plans. But now I was cleaning other people's offices, living with the sharp smell of cleaning chemicals soaked into the sleeves of my old uniform. 6 months earlier, I had taken this job because I had no other choice. I never imagined that my life would end up this way. I trusted my son. I gave him everything I had. I even sold my 2-bedroom condo and gave all the money to help his family. At the time, I thought I was making the right decision as a mother, but I soon learned that sometimes the person you trust the most can be the one who hurts you the deepest. My son, Dennis, and his wife, Allison, gradually began making me feel like an unwanted guest in their home. And a few months later, I walked out of their house carrying nothing but a single suitcase. They gave me just $500. From that day on, I lived alone in a tiny, cheap room and went to work every day just to get by. I had long since stopped crying over the life I had lost. There was only one thing I wanted to understand. What was going to happen to me now? The answer to that question came one rainy day, inside the office of an elite transportation company. I was there, as usual, mopping floors and emptying trash cans. It had been raining non-stop for 2 days. A mudslide had washed out part of the road over the mountain pass. As I was collecting the trash bins around the office, I suddenly heard loud shouting coming from the CEO's room. An angry man's voice echoed throughout the entire office. "Edward, please understand. It's absolute hell on the mountain pass right now. A mudslide took out a lane and a half. The fog is so thick you can't see the hood. It's been pouring rain for 2 days straight. Our senior driver, Smith, refused. Porter refused. The guys don't want to risk their lives, not even for a bonus. The car will just be thrown off the cliff at the first hairpin turn of the switchback." "I don't care about your guys." Vance shifted to a scream, spitting as he spoke. "You position yourselves as a VIP service, so earn it. I'm paying triple the rate. Get behind the wheel yourself, Arthur. You violated the terms of the contract." At that time, I was standing quietly in the corner of the office near the shredder, holding a gray plastic trash bag. I was wearing a blue work smock buttoned all the way up and plain canvas sneakers. My face had no makeup, my hair pulled into a tight bun at the back of my head. My hands bore the deep marks of harsh cleaning chemicals. I had come here to work as a janitor 6 months ago when life completely backed me into a corner. 3 years ago, my son Dennis and his young wife Allison convinced me to sell my 2-bedroom condo in the suburbs. "Mom, why do you need such a huge place all by yourself? We are building a house and we don't have enough for the foundation and walls. Live with us in our apartment for now, and then we will all move into the house together. Plus the grandkids will be right nearby." I, being a kind soul, agreed. I gave them every last cent, and then the hell began. First, Allison quietly complained to Dennis in the kitchen that I had occupied the bathroom for a whole 20 minutes again. Then came the open reproaches. I became an extra mouth to feed and a free maid. Margaret, since you're just sitting at home, iron the laundry. Margaret, make dinner. We are tired. When I got a job just to have some of my own pennies, Allison threw a tantrum. She claimed I was disgracing their family, walking around with a mop in other people's offices. What would people say? My son took his wife's side. A month ago, he came up to me in the evening as I was sitting in my tiny room by the window, avoiding my gaze. "Mom, here's the thing. Allison's sister is moving here for college. Could you find another place to live? We'll help you with the first month's rent for a room." They helped. They gave me $500 and forgot about me. Now I was renting a tiny corner on the outskirts of town, where the only furniture was an old bed with rusty springs, a bedside lamp on a nightstand, and a tiny closet. My son hadn't called in 2 weeks. When I dialed him myself last Thursday, he quickly muttered back, "Mom, I'm busy. Allison is making grocery lists. Let's talk later." He hung up. I tied a knot in the trash bag. The tension in the CEO's office reached its peak. Vance paced from corner to corner, stepping on the fallen pen with his expensive shoes and snapping it with a dry crack. "Arthur, you have 5 minutes," Vance hissed, stopping by the window where heavy raindrops lashed against the glass. "Either the car is at the porch or tomorrow your firm goes under the hammer for breach of contract debts." I calmly walked up to the desk, picked up the broken pieces of the pen, threw them into my bag, and looked at the CEO. "Mr. Sterling, let me drive. I know the road over the pass. I can handle the car." Dead silence hung in the office. Arthur Sterling froze with the handkerchief in his hand, slowly turned his head toward me, and let out a nervous, hoarse laugh. "Maggie, have you lost your mind? Go command your mops out in the hallway. We have a business crisis here, and you come in with your nonsense. Go, get out of here. Don't interfere." Vance turned sharply from the window. His bloodshot eyes scanned my figure. A blue smock, a mop in the corner, a tired face with wrinkles around the eyes. However, there was no fear in my gaze. I looked straight, calmly, and somehow very heavy. The kind of look people have when they've seen things in this life that would turn ordinary folks gray overnight. "Listen here, lady." Vance stepped toward me. "Do you even know how to drive a car, or do you only take the bus to the supermarket?" "I do," I answered evenly. "Commercial driver's license, military ID, 21 years of service. I drove trucks and command vehicles overseas in Afghanistan. I've navigated enough switchbacks in the fog. If your Chevy Suburban is in good shape, I will get you there." Vance fell silent for a second, digesting what he heard. Arthur Sterling jumped out of his chair. "Edward, don't listen to her. She's just a cleaning lady. If something happens to you, I'll go to jail." "I don't give a damn," Vance barked, making a decision on the fly. "Let the devil himself drive, even if it's the janitor. If she wants to live, she'll make it. Listen to me, Commander in a smock. If we make it by 2 o'clock, I'll pay you $5,000 on top of your pathetic salary. If you wreck the car or we're late, I'll personally make sure you spend the rest of your days mopping floors in a prison cell. Give her the keys," he shouted at the CEO. Arthur Sterling, with trembling hands, pulled the key fob for the heavy-armored SUV out of the safe. I took it, nodded, and headed for the exit. "I need 5 minutes to change," I said at the door. 5 minutes later, I walked out into the underground parking lot. I had swapped the blue smock for a simple black jacket and old jeans. In my hands, I held a small thermos with my morning tea. Vance was already sitting in the back seat of the car, nervously tapping his fingers on the expensive leather armrest. I sat behind the wheel, adjusted the seat and the mirrors to fit me. The dashboard lit up with neon light. The powerful V8 engine purred deeply. I smoothly shifted into gear and drove out of the company courtyard into a gray wall of rain. The first 15 miles we drove in silence. Vance constantly tapped on his smartphone screen, cursing the bad reception. The city was left behind. The road went sharply upward, narrowing and winding into the Cascade Mountains. The rain intensified. The wipers worked at maximum speed with a whistling sound, clearing streams of water from the windshield. "Hey, can we go a little faster?" Vance shouted from the back. "At this rate, we'll only get there by evening." I didn't even turn my head. My hands gripped the steering wheel with a death grip, but my movements were surprisingly smooth. I felt the car with my back, with every nerve. "You don't accelerate on a mountain switchback when the asphalt is washing away," I said calmly. "Do you want to arrive alive? Keep quiet and put your seatbelt on. You aren't buckled in. The sensor is on." "Are you giving me orders now?" Vance started, but at that moment the car entered a zone of mountain fog as thick as milk. Visibility dropped to 10 feet. Ahead appeared the first long curve, a sharp loop over a cliff. The SUV braked softly. I shifted the transmission into manual mode, holding a lower gear. The car drifted slightly on the wet clay that had fallen from the slope onto the road, but with a short, calculated movement of the steering wheel, I leveled out the 3-ton body. Vance was noticeably shaken in the back. Quickly, without another word, he pulled the seatbelt and clicked the buckle. The most dangerous section began, the storm pass. On the right towered a solid rock face from which dirty water cascaded like waterfalls, carrying small stones. On the left was emptiness, a black abyss veiled by fog. The road had turned into a continuous stream of mud. Suddenly, out of the fog, right in front of the hood, appeared the tail lights of a stationary semi-truck. The truck driver, blocking half of the only surviving lane, was trying to pull a chain over his tire. There was almost no room to maneuver. Vance screamed, covering his face with his hands. "Brake, brake, you fool!" I didn't slam on the brakes. On this surface, the armored beast would just spin out and fly off the cliff. I let off the gas, pressed the side of the car right against the rock face so that the branches of the bushes scraped against the metal of the doors, and bypassed the semi with literally 2 inches to spare, popping back onto my trajectory. The wheel hung over the void for a fraction of a second, sending a handful of gravel tumbling down. But the all-wheel drive pulled the car out. Vance sat pale and breathing heavily. Large drops of sweat stood out on his forehead. He looked in the rearview mirror at my face. Not a single muscle twitched on my cheeks. I was looking only forward. My eyes were narrowed, my lips pressed into a thin line. How did you do that?" he asked quietly, losing all his arrogant tone. "Back in 2010 near Kandahar, this is how we dodged an ambush in an LMTV with wounded soldiers," I replied without changing my intonation. "The road there was worse, and mortars were dropping behind us. So sit quietly, Mr. Vance. We still have 3 loops to get through." The next 40 minutes dragged on like an eternity. I drove the car with surgical precision. I knew where to hug the center line, where to run the wheel along the edge of the landslide to avoid catching a sharp rock. In one place, the road was completely washed out. A turbulent stream several yards wide crossed the asphalt. The driver of an ordinary passenger car would have turned around here. I stopped the car for a second, assessed the depth by the churning of the water around the boulders, engaged the differential locks, and smoothly moved the SUV into the water. The water rose above the side steps, roaring dully under the floorboards, but the heavy Suburban stubbornly rolled over the water obstacle and out onto the hard pavement. When we finally passed the summit and the road went down, the fog began to thin. The rain turned into a fine drizzle. Ahead, flat suburban interchanges appeared. I glanced at the digital clock on the dashboard. 1:45 p.m. I pulled into the parking lot of a large business center in Seattle, exactly 15 minutes before Vance's scheduled time. I softly stopped the car, shifted into park, and turned off the engine. My hands on the steering wheel finally relaxed, and I felt how deeply numb they had become. Vance sat motionless for about a minute. His well-groomed hands trembled slightly as he unbuckled his seatbelt. He got out of the car. His legs buckled slightly on the asphalt as if he were learning to walk all over again. Looking over the vehicle, scratched by branches, covered in a layer of mountain mud, but absolutely intact, he turned to me. I had also stepped out for some fresh air and taken out my thermos. The investor silently opened his leather briefcase, took out a thick stack of cash, $5,000 in crisp bills, and handed it to me. Here, exactly as promised. I calmly took the money. I didn't bother counting it, just put it in my jacket pocket. Thank you, Mr. Vance. Your meeting is in 10 minutes. Go. Vance looked at me somehow differently. The lordly arrogance had disappeared. What remained was the tough, but now respectful gaze of a businessman. So, military driver? He asked. Yes. 20 years in the cab, 1 year in the hospital after a concussion, then I retired. I see. Vance nodded to his own thoughts. Wait for me here. We will head back together, but without the racing this time. We returned to the premium transit office only by 8 p.m. The storm had died down. Road crews were already clearing the pass, and the way back went smoothly. Vance was silent the whole way, studying some documents on his tablet, but he threw brief glances at me a few times. When the car pulled into the underground parking lot of the office, Arthur Sterling was already waiting for us. He was pacing by the entrance, wringing his hands. Seeing the intact car and Vance stepping out of it, the CEO rushed up to him. "Edward, thank God you're alive. I've been on pins and needles all day, taking heart pills by the handful. How did it go? Did this Maggie screw anything up? I'll fire her right today for insubordination and creating an emergency situation." Vance stopped, slowly turned to the CEO, and looked at him in a way that made Arthur instantly cut himself short and take a step back. "Fire her?" Vance asked quietly, with a threat in his voice. "You, Arthur, instead of managing your business, are just warming a chair in your office. Your professional drivers got scared like little girls, and this woman pulled me out of the kind of hellhole you've only seen in movies. She saved your business from bankruptcy today, and me from losing a billion-dollar contract." Arthur looked in confusion from the investor to me, standing calmly nearby, holding my empty thermos. "But Edward, she is just a cleaning lady. She doesn't have such job descriptions." "Now she will." Vance cut him off. "Tomorrow morning you will sign an order appointing Margaret as the head of your entire transportation department, with a full salary, a personal office, and the right to personally hire and fire drivers. If I find out you didn't do this, or if you try to force her out, I will terminate my contract with your firm that very day. Any questions?" "No. No questions, Edward," the CEO babbled, turning pale. "We will do everything. The order will be ready tomorrow morning." Vance turned to me and gave a short nod. "Thank you again, Margaret. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., I expect to see you here in your new position. I need strict logistics control for my construction sites. I think you can handle it." When Vance left, Arthur turned to me. His face was a mix of anger and forced obsequiousness. "Well, Margaret, congratulations. I expect you in my office tomorrow morning with your documents. We will process the transfer." "All right, Mr. Sterling," I replied calmly. "I'll drop by right after I hand over my mop and bucket to the night shift." I took a taxi home. For the first time in 6 months, I allowed myself such a luxury. In my jacket pocket lay the $5,000 I had earned through honest, hard work. For me, it was a massive amount of money, 3 months of my previous salary. I entered my tiny rented room. The communal kitchen smelled of fried onions. A TV mumbled behind the thin wall. I sat on the bed without turning on the light. It was quiet in my soul, and somehow very empty. Justice had prevailed. I would have a decent job, and money would appear. But there was still a splinter inside. My son, my only son for whom I once lived. I took out my phone. There wasn't a single missed call on the screen. I sighed, placed the cell phone on the nightstand, and went to the shared kitchen to put the kettle on. A week passed. I had fully stepped into my new role. The blue smock was replaced by a strict pantsuit, which I bought with my bonus money. I now had 12 drivers under my command. On the very first day, I gave them a harsh test, making them pass a defensive driving exam on the track. 3 of the privileged ones, who got into the company through connections and only knew how to smoke beautifully next to expensive cars, I fired without regret, despite Arthur Sterling's weak protests. The rest of the guys initially treated a female boss with a smirk, but when Smith, that same senior driver, respectfully told his colleagues how Maggie navigated the pass through the mud in a storm, the smirks were replaced by discipline. They started to respect me. On Friday evening, I was sitting in my office reviewing the trip logs for the weekend. The phone on my desk vibrated quietly. I glanced at the screen. My son's name, Dennis, lit up. I didn't pick up the receiver immediately. I calmly finished reading the line in the document, put a sweeping signature on it, and only on the 4th ring pressed the answer button. "Yes, Dennis, I'm listening." My son's voice on the line was unusually sweet, even ingratiating. "Hey, Mom, how are you doing over there? You haven't called at all. Allison and I miss you." I chuckled quietly to myself. With a casual movement, I adjusted the cuff of my blouse. "I'm busy, Dennis. Lots of work. Did something happen?" "No, nothing like that. It's just that Allison saw a photo on your company's official website on social media. There's a news update that you were appointed head of the department." "Mom, is it true? They say the salary there is crazy now." So that was it. That was where this sudden filial love came from. Allison, who used to twist her lips in disgust at the mention of her cleaning lady mother-in-law, quickly calculated the benefits. "It's true, Dennis. I was promoted." "Mom, wow, you're amazing. We are so happy for you, honestly. Listen, we were thinking, why are you suffering in rented corners? Paying money to strangers? Come back to us. Allison's sister changed her mind about moving here. Your room is free. We'll live like before, all together, like a happy family. Allison is actually making a festive dinner right now, baking your favorite cabbage pie. Come over tonight and we'll help you move your things over the weekend." I listened to him, and pictures of the past months flashed before my eyes. How Allison deliberately re-washed the plates after me, claiming her mother-in-law smelled like cheap soap. How Dennis averted his eyes when his wife yelled at me for leaving the TV on. How they threw me out the door with one suitcase of old clothes, giving me $500 to get by like a stray dog. There was no room left inside me for the old resentment. There was no desire to argue. There was only a cold, mature understanding of reality. Trust is not a vase. You can't glue it back together in 1 minute just because my social status changed and I got money. "No, Dennis," I said calmly and firmly. "I won't come over today, nor on the weekend." A short pause hung on the line. I could hear someone sighing loudly on the other end. Apparently, Allison was standing right there, eavesdropping. "Mom, what's wrong?" My son's voice grew offended. "Are you mad? Look, we were a little hot-headed back then. It happens to everyone. Relatives should know how to forgive. We only wanted the best for you so you could become independent. And now, see how well everything turned out?" Things turned out well for me, Dennis, thanks to my work and my strength. But you only remembered me when I moved from a broom closet to a management chair. "Mom, how are you talking to me?" The familiar selfish notes broke through his voice. "We are opening our hearts to you, and the second you get money, you get all arrogant. You decided to forget your own son." I quietly placed my cup of cooled tea on the wooden coaster, a small detail. The cup clinked against the wood with a dry, short sound. "I haven't forgotten you, Dennis. You are my son, and I will always wish you well. But I will not live with you anymore, nor will I support your family. I am going to rent a nice apartment for myself downtown, closer to work, and you go live your own lives. Build your house, earn your money, learn to be a man, and take responsibility for your wife yourself, without your mom's wallet and your mom's living space. Go to hell." Dennis exhaled with anger and hung up the phone. I slowly placed the phone face down on the desk. It hurt. Yes, of course. A mother's heart doesn't turn to stone in a single day, but it was a right, cleansing pain. The pain of breaking free from the toxic dependency I had lived in for the past years, trying to earn the love of those who only valued material things. I stood up and walked to the office window. The evening streetlights were turning on outside. The city was living its life. The rain had stopped. The sky over the mountains somewhere far away beyond the pass was clear and starry. I picked up my purse, turned off the light in the office, locked the door, and walked to the elevator. Ahead of me lay a new, difficult but absolutely my own honest life, where I made the rules, and in this life there was no longer any room for someone else's meanness disguised as family ties. Thank you for listening to the story to the end. Be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share your opinion in the comments. See you later.